The galaxy would later agree on one thing: everything changed the moment the message reached human space. A single transmission, damaged and desperate, slipped through trade relays and civilian channels alike. It was not a threat. It was not a declaration of war. It was a plea. And it came from a species that had been taught since birth to fear humanity. The message began with screaming. It was cut short, distorted by static, but long enough. Long enough for anyone watching to understand what was happening. Cities burned beneath alien skies. Towering structures collapsed as orbital fire rained down. Civilians ran in panic while armored figures hunted them through the streets. Then the image shifted. Eggs. Thousands of them. Soft, glowing, alive. They were crushed under heavy boots while laughter echoed through the channel. The transmission ended there. On the human frontier world of Arden Prime, the silence that followed was heavy and cold. Commander Elias Rowan stood in the operations center, his jaw tight, his hands clenched behind his back. Arden Prime was a mining colony, harsh and practical, built by people who understood survival. They had seen pirates, slavers, and worse. But this was different. This was not an attack on humans. This was something older, darker. "Replay it," Rowan said quietly. No one moved at first. Then the tech officer obeyed. The screams filled the room again. "Stop," Rowan said after only a few seconds. "Enough." He turned to the others. "Source. Species identification pending," the officer replied. "They call themselves the Kalari. Non-militarized. Known for diplomacy, art, philosophy. No standing army." Rowan frowned. "Why are they contacting us?" Another officer answered. "Because no one else is listening." Within hours, the transmission had spread across human networks. It reached Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and the deep space fleets. Humans everywhere saw the same images. They saw children slaughtered for entertainment. They saw a peaceful people erased because they were easy prey. And something old stirred inside humanity. The Kalari envoy arrived 2 days later. Their ship was barely holding together when it entered Arden Prime's orbit. Burn marks scarred its hull. Entire sections were sealed with emergency plating. It landed hard, kicking up dust and debris outside the colony's main command complex. Medical teams rushed forward. Only 7 Kalari survived the journey. They were tall and slender, with smooth, pale skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with exhaustion and fear. One of them, clearly injured but still standing, stepped forward. She introduced herself as Envoy Lyra Varel. Rowan met her personally. "You are far from your territory," he said carefully. Lyra's voice trembled, even through the translator. "There is no territory left." She was taken to the medical wing, stabilized enough to speak. Rowan stood across from her as she told her story. The Kalari had never built weapons. They believed war was a failure of intelligence. For centuries, they survived through alliances, reason, and compromise. When the Dravok Imperium found them, none of that mattered. The Dravok were conquerors. They measured worth in strength and obedience. When the Kalari refused to kneel, the Imperium did not negotiate. They erased entire worlds. They broadcast the destruction as a warning. "We went to the council," Lyra said softly. "They debated. They condemned. They voted. While they talked, we died." Rowan already knew the answer, but he asked anyway. "Why come to us?" Lyra met his eyes. "Because they fear you." That surprised him. "They call your worlds death traps," she continued. "They say humans evolved in violence and chaos. They say you are unpredictable, dangerous, capable of terrible things." She swallowed. "We are out of options. We are asking the monsters of the galaxy to save us." The words hung in the air. Rowan felt anger rise in his chest, sharp and hot. Not at her. At the galaxy that pushed her to this point. "You know what you're asking," he said. "Yes," Lyra replied. Slowly, painfully, she lowered herself to the floor. "And I am begging anyway." Silence filled the room. Rowan stepped forward and helped her stand. His grip was firm, steady. "You should never have had to kneel," he said. That night, Rowan sent a priority transmission to Earth. He included everything. The footage, Lyra's testimony, medical reports, verified intelligence on the Dravik Imperium. He ended it with one sentence. "They are killing children." The response was not immediate. But it was inevitable. On Earth, the footage spread faster than any official briefing. Civilians saw it before politicians could contain it. Across cities and colonies, humans reacted the same way. With rage. Protests erupted. Shipyard workers refused civilian contracts and volunteered for military production. Engineers dusted off designs that had been shelved for decades. Veterans watched the footage in silence, then began making calls. Human history had taught them many things. One of them was simple. There were lines you did not cross. 3 days later, the Unified Human Assembly convened an emergency session. Military leaders, scientists, diplomats, and civilian representatives filled the chamber. Admiral Rhea Solin, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense, stood before them. "We can ignore this," she said. "Many in the galaxy will expect us to. Or we can answer." A representative asked the question everyone feared. "Can we win?" Solin did not hesitate. "Not by their rules." She brought up a classified file. "Humanity has spent centuries pretending to be small," she continued. "We followed treaties. We limited ourselves. We hid what we built, because we hoped we'd never need it." The room was silent. "The Kalari asked for protection," Solin said. "If we grant it, there will be no halfway measures. The Dravik Imperium will not stop because we ask politely." She looked directly into the camera. "If we act, we will change the galaxy forever." Back on Arden Prime, Lyra waited. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She watched the stars from the medical wing, knowing that somewhere among them, her people were dying. Rowan joined her as the message finally arrived. He read it once. Then again. Then he exhaled slowly. "They answered," he said. Lyra turned toward him, hope and fear battling in her eyes. "And?" Rowan met her gaze. "Humanity accepts your plea." Her breath caught. "But understand this," he continued. "When humans protect something, we do it completely." Lyra did not yet understand what that meant. The galaxy would soon learn. Hidden shipyards activated. Black Ops fleets powered up. Weapons banned by every known treaty came online. Humanity did not roar. It did not boast. It prepared. Because somewhere far away, monsters believed they were untouchable. And humanity was about to prove them wrong. The first thing the galaxy noticed was silence. Trade routes near human space went dark. Long-range sensors picked up unusual activity, ships moving without transponders, fleets assembling in regions that had been empty for decades. The Galactic Council issued inquiries. They received no answers. Humanity had stopped talking. On Earth, deep beneath the surface, Admiral Rhea Solin stood inside Command Vault 0. Only a handful of people even knew the vault existed. Fewer still understood what it meant when it was opened. "Status," she said. "Phase 1 is complete," replied Director Cato Morrow, Head of Strategic Development. "All Black fleets are active. Autonomous production nodes are online. The Reaper network is standing by." Solin nodded slowly. "And the Kalari evacuation?" "Underway. Quietly. The Dravik haven't noticed yet." "They will," Solin said. "Soon." She turned to the central display. It showed Dravik Imperium space, hundreds of systems glowing red. Massive fleets patrolled predictable routes. Fortress worlds bristled with weapons. By every traditional measure, the Imperium was unbeatable. Humanity did not intend to fight traditionally. Far from Earth, in a dead system stripped of planets, a human fleet gathered. There were only 12 visible ships. Any Dravik scout would have laughed at such a force. But these ships were not visible to Dravik scouts. They existed in a blind spot, designed that way. Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge of the HSS Nightfall, one of humanity's oldest hidden warships. Her crew was calm, focused. No speeches. No dramatic music. Just quiet efficiency. "Confirm orders," she said. Her tactical officer nodded. "Operation Silent Shield. Primary objective, secure Kalari refugees. Secondary objective, observe Dravok response. No engagement unless authorized." Voss exhaled slowly. "They won't even know we're there." "That's the point." Across Dravok space, Kalari survivors were being hunted system by system. Refuge ships were intercepted. Colonies burned. The Imperium did not rush. They enjoyed the process. Then something strange began to happen. Entire Kalari transport convoys vanished. No wreckage. No distress signals. No Dravok victory broadcasts. At first, the Imperium assumed malfunction or cowardice. Then entire patrol wings stopped reporting in. Dravok commanders grew irritated. They doubled their forces. Still, ships disappeared. On the bridge of a Dravok flagship, Warlord Krex Tal slammed a clawed fist into the command console. "Find them," he snarled. "I don't care how." Sensors screamed. Space folded. Human ships emerged, not in attack formation, but in perfect defensive positions around a cluster of Kalari refugee vessels. Smooth, dark hulls reflected no light. Weapons remained powered down. The Dravok fleet froze. What species dares interfere? Krex Tal demanded. A single transmission answered. Calm. Clear. Human. This convoy is under the protection of humanity. Laughter erupted across Dravok channels. Humanity. Krex Tal sneered. You are insects pretending to be predators. Withdraw, the human voice replied. This is your only warning. Krex Tal ordered the attack. Dravok weapons fired. Nothing happened. Every shot missed. Every missile failed. Guidance systems shut down mid-flight. Targeting sensors filled with ghosts, false images, impossible trajectories. Then the human ships moved. They did not fire. They simply placed themselves between the Dravok fleet and the refugees. Gravity warped around them. Space itself seemed to bend. Krex Tal felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Fall back, he roared. The Dravok ships retreated in chaos. Human ships did not pursue. They escorted the refugees away, untouched. Across the Imperium, reports flooded in. Refugees vanishing. Fleets repelled without casualties. Systems going dark, not destroyed, but isolated. Communication relays failing. Supply lines collapsing. The Galactic Council noticed too. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors demanded explanations. Human representatives remained absent. On Arden Prime, Envoy Lyra watched the reports with disbelief. They are saving them, she whispered. All of them. Rowan nodded. We said we would. But they aren't killing, she said. Not yet. No, Rowan replied. This is mercy. On Earth, Admiral Solin received the latest data. Phase 1 success rate, 98%, Morrow reported. Dravok confusion increasing. No confirmed understanding of our capabilities. Solin folded her hands. Good. Begin Phase 2. Morrow hesitated. That will expose us. Yes, she said. That's the point. A message was broadcast across all known frequencies. Every language. Every channel. It came from humanity. To the Dravok Imperium. You have slaughtered the defenseless. You have ignored every warning. This is your final notice. Cease all hostilities. Release all prisoners. Withdraw from Kalari space. A pause. Failure to comply will result in irreversible consequences. The Dravok response was immediate. They executed prisoners on live broadcast. They laughed. They sent a message of their own. Come and try. Admiral Solin watched the footage in silence. Around her, officers clenched their fists. Some turned away. She did not. Authorize Phase 3, she said. Deep in the dark, machines awakened. The Reapers were not ships in the traditional sense. They were systems. Swarms. Self-replicating constructs designed to dismantle enemy infrastructure with surgical precision. They did not target civilians. They targeted power, production, command. They spread like shadows. Dravok shipyards shut down mid-construction. War factories tore themselves apart. Communication hubs collapsed into silence. The Imperium panicked. For the first time in their history, they were losing control. Krextal stood before a shattered command screen, breathing hard. They're not fighting us, he growled. They're taking us apart. Yes, said a quiet voice behind him. He turned. A human hologram shimmered into existence. This is impossible, Krextal spat. You are weak. The human smiled faintly. No, he said. We're just done pretending. The transmission cut. Across the galaxy, a realization began to spread. Humanity was not rising. Humanity had always been there, waiting. And this was only the beginning. The Dravok Imperium did not know how to be afraid. For centuries, fear belonged to others. It lived in the screams of conquered worlds, in the silence of species erased from history. The Dravok ruled through certainty, the certainty that no one could stop them. That certainty was breaking. Across Imperium space, systems failed without warning. Fleets launched and vanished. Supplies never arrived. Commanders shouted orders that no longer mattered. And worse than the damage was the mystery. They could not see their enemy. Warlord Krextal stood before the high conclave of the Imperium, his armored form rigid with fury. Around him, other warlords projected into the chamber, their expressions shifting between anger and unease. This is not war, one of them hissed. This is sabotage. Krextal snarled. Then we will force them into war. The decision was swift and brutal. The Dravok would strike at the heart of human space. They gathered fleets, thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. The largest armada the Imperium had ever assembled. Their target was clear, Earth. The death world. Break humanity in one overwhelming blow, and the rest would fall in line. The armada moved. In human space, alarms rang. Admiral Rear Solin stood calmly in the command center, watching the data flow in. They're coming, an officer said. Full force. Straight through the Alios corridor. Solin nodded. As expected. Commander Park frowned. Admiral, that corridor is our weakest route. Solin's eyes never left the screen. It used to be. She tapped a control. Activate the lattice. Far out in the Alios corridor, space shimmered. The Dravok Armada entered at full speed. And reality betrayed them. Navigation systems failed instantly. Ships slammed into invisible barriers. Fleets scattered as gravity twisted in impossible directions. Space folded, stretched, and collapsed around them. Panic erupted. What is happening? Krextal roared from his flagship. No one could answer. The Alios corridor was not empty space. It was a weapon. Decades earlier, humanity had learned a simple truth. Space itself could be engineered. Gravity wells, quantum anchors, folded dimensions. Concepts dismissed by the Galactic Council as too dangerous, too unethical. Humans had quietly perfected them. The corridor became a maze of controlled chaos. Dravok ships collided, tore themselves apart, or drifted helplessly as human fleets emerged from nowhere. But humanity still did not rush to destroy them. Instead, they isolated them. One by one, Dravok ships were disabled. Engines shut down. Weapons locked. Life support remained active. The message was clear. You are beaten. You just don't know it yet. On Earth, the Council finally received a human transmission. It was brief. We are containing the threat. Do not interfere. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council listened. Back on Arden Prime, Envoy Lyra watched the tactical feeds with trembling hands. "They could end them," she whispered. "Why don't they?" Rowan stood beside her. "Because this isn't about revenge." "Then what is it about?" He answered quietly. "Ending the cycle." Within the Alios corridor, Krextal realized the truth too late. "This was planned," he muttered. "All of it." A human vessel appeared before his flagship. Larger than anything he had ever seen, its hull marked not with weapons, but with scars. Old ones. A transmission opened. Admiral Solin appeared on the screen. "You came to our home," she said evenly. "You ignored our warnings. Now you will listen." Krextal bared his teeth. "Kill us or release us. We will never submit." Solin's expression did not change. "You already have." She gestured, and the display behind her changed. It showed Dravok worlds. Not burning. Silent. Energy grids offline. Shipyards frozen. Armies stranded without supply or command. "You wanted a decisive battle," Solin continued. "So did we. We just fought it 50 years ago, when we decided how to stop someone like you." Krextal's breath came fast. "You cannot hold an empire hostage forever." "No," Solin agreed. "We don't need to." She leaned forward slightly. "Your people will live. But your Imperium will not." Across Dravok space, something unprecedented happened. Human ships appeared above capital worlds, not firing, not threatening. They transmitted evacuation routes, medical data, instructions. Dravok civilians fled in confusion as their rulers lost control. Then the Reapers moved again. This time, they targeted something different. Authority. Imperial command structures collapsed. Warlords were isolated, cut off from their forces. Control codes failed. Military AI turned dormant. The Imperium stopped functioning. Krextal screamed as his command screens went dark. "You're destroying us." "No," Solin replied. "We're removing your ability to hurt others." The transmission ended. Within days, the Dravok Imperium ceased to exist as a unified power. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had done what no one else dared. They had defeated a monster without becoming one. But the story was not over. On Earth, Solin met with her advisors. "The war is functionally won," Park said. "But remnants remain. Warlords. Fleets still loyal to the old ways." Solin nodded. "And they will resist." "What now?" he asked. Solin looked at a final report, one that showed Kalari children arriving safely on human-protected worlds. "Now," she said, "we make sure this never happens again." Far away, Envoy Lyra stood among her people, watching Kalari children play under an alien sky. "They did this for us," she said softly. Rowan nodded. "They did it because it was right." Lyra looked up at the stars. "What happens when the galaxy realizes what humanity truly is?" Rowan answered without hesitation. "Then the galaxy will finally grow up." And somewhere in the dark, the last loyal Dravok warlords began to plan their final, desperate move. They had one weapon left. And humanity had been waiting for that too. The Dravok Imperium was dead, but its hatred was not. In the vacuum left behind, scattered warlords clung to what remained of their power. They hid in fringe systems, abandoned shipyards, and dead worlds stripped of value long ago. They no longer spoke of conquest. They spoke only of revenge. And they had one final weapon. Deep within a red dwarf system far beyond normal trade routes, Dravok engineers activated the Ember Crown, a stellar destabilizer stolen decades earlier from a forgotten precursor ruin. It was crude, unstable, and monstrously powerful. Its purpose was simple. If the Dravok could not rule the galaxy, they would burn part of it. The target was not Earth. It was Aurelian Gate, a densely populated transit system shared by multiple species. Millions of civilians. A symbol of cooperation. A place where Kalari refugees now lived under human protection. The message was broadcast openly. If humanity interferes, the warlord declared, this star will die. Across the galaxy, panic exploded. The Galactic Council froze. They had no fleets strong enough. No technology fast enough. No solution that didn't end in catastrophe. Once again, all eyes turned to humanity. On Earth, Admiral Rhea Solin watched the live feed with cold focus. They want to force our hand, Commander Park said. If we attack the device, the star goes critical. Solin nodded. They've boxed themselves in. Park swallowed. And us with them. Silence filled the room. Then Solin spoke. No. They've boxed themselves in alone. She turned to a sealed terminal and placed her hand against the biometric lock. Authorize Project Dawn Line, she said. Park's eyes widened. That was theoretical. Now it's necessary. Project Dawn Line was not a weapon. It was worse. Human scientists had discovered that stars could be retuned, their fusion balanced and reshaped through controlled gravitational resonance. It required impossible precision, enormous energy, and a deep understanding of stellar physics. No one else had tried. Because no one else had survived the experiments. The Dawn Line fleet launched within hours. Massive, slow-moving vessels designed not for combat, but for manipulation of cosmic forces. They traveled openly. The Dravok warlords laughed. You come to surrender, the lead warlord sneered over open channel. No, Solin replied calmly. We came to fix your mistake. As the fleet entered the system, Dravok forces opened fire. Human escort ships intercepted every strike. Not with overwhelming firepower, but with flawless coordination. Missiles vanished into folded space. Energy beams bent away from their targets. The Dawn Line vessels continued forward, unarmed and unstoppable. The Ember Crown activated. The star began to destabilize. Alarms screamed across Aurelian Gate. Entire worlds braced for extinction. Solin stood unmoving as the Dawn Line array unfolded. Begin resonance, she ordered. Space sang. Gravity waves rippled outward, invisible but precise. The star shuddered, then slowly, impossibly, stabilized. Fusion reactions balanced. The Ember Crown's influence was absorbed, redirected, nullified. The Dravok warlords stared in horror. That's impossible, one whispered. Humanity had not destroyed the weapon. They had made it irrelevant. The Dawn Line fleet transmitted a final message. This system is now under permanent human protection. Stand down. The warlords refused. They fired everything they had. Solin closed her eyes for one brief moment. Authorize containment. The Reapers moved, not to kill, but to isolate. Dravok ships were disabled, boarded, and seized. No executions. No vengeance. The last resistance ended not with fire, but with silence. Across the galaxy, reactions were immediate. Fear. A species that could dismantle empires without conquest. That could stop stellar destruction without annihilation. That chose restraint when extermination was easier. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. They sent a delegation. Envoy Lyra stood beside Admiral Solin as the Council representatives arrived on Earth. Their voices trembled as they spoke. You terrify us, one admitted. Your power is beyond anything we imagined. Solin met their gaze. We should, she said. Because power without restraint is what created the Dravok. She gestured to Lyra. We used ours to protect the defenseless. Lyra stepped forward. You feared humans because you believed strength meant cruelty, she said. You were wrong. The Council fell silent. Humanity did not demand authority. They did not claim territory. They demanded responsibility. A new doctrine spread across the galaxy. No species would face extermination alone again. And humanity would make sure of it. But even as peace settled, one final question remained. What happens when the Guardians become the strongest force in existence? Solin looked out at the stars, knowing the answer would come in time. Humanity had made its choice. And the galaxy would never forget it. The war was over. That was what the galaxy told itself. The Dravik Imperium no longer existed as a unified force. Its warlords were imprisoned. Its fleets dismantled. Its stolen weapons locked away under human oversight. The stars were quiet again. But silence, humanity knew, did not mean safety. On Earth, Admiral Rhea Solin stood before the unified human assembly for the final time in her role as wartime commander. The chamber was filled not with celebration, but reflection. "We won," one representative said. "The galaxy is safe." Solin shook her head slowly. "No. The galaxy is alive. That's different." She brought up images on the central display. Refugee worlds being rebuilt. Kalari children attending schools alongside humans. Mixed species medical teams sharing knowledge. Human engineers working beside alien scientists. "This is what protection looks like," she said. "Not dominance. Not fear. Responsibility." Humanity had made a decision in the aftermath of the conflict, one that surprised everyone. They dismantled the Reaper network. Not entirely, but enough. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humanity voluntarily placed limits on itself. Weapons were sealed behind multi-species oversight. Stellar manipulation technology was shared under strict safeguards. Defensive corridors were opened, not hidden. Trust, humanity decided, had to be built the hard way. Envoy Lyra returned to Kalari space, what remained of it. The worlds were scarred, but alive. Gardens replaced ruins. Art returned. Music echoed through rebuilt halls. She stood before a monument carved not of stone, but light. It showed no warriors. No battles. Only hands, different shapes, different species, reaching toward one another. A Kalari child looked up at her. "Why did the humans help us?" the child asked. Lyra considered the question carefully. "Because they know what it means to almost lose everything," she said. "And they chose to be better than their fear." Elsewhere, former Dravik civilians were being resettled under supervision. Many were confused. Some were angry. But others began to understand something they had never been taught. Strength did not have to mean cruelty. A former Dravik soldier, now disarmed and rebuilding infrastructure under human guidance, asked a human engineer one day, "Why didn't you wipe us out when you could?" The engineer answered simply, "Because then we'd be proving you right." That answer spread. Across the galaxy, a new term entered common use. The human line. It meant a boundary that must not be crossed. It meant children were untouchable. Civilians were sacred. Extermination was unforgivable. And if that line was crossed, humanity would respond. Not with rage, but with certainty. Years later, the Galactic Council was no longer the same body that had failed the Kalari. It had teeth now. Enforced by collective action, and quietly, by the knowledge that humanity was watching. Human ambassadors did not sit at the head of the table. They stood behind it. Watching. Waiting. On a quiet evening on Earth, Solin walked through a park filled with voices from dozens of species. Children laughed in languages that had once screamed in terror. Commander Park joined her. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, "if we went too far?" Solin watched a Kalari child chase a human one across the grass. "No," she said. "I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone far enough." Park nodded slowly. Far above them, ships crossed the stars, not warships, but explorers, teachers, healers. Humanity had not become the ruler of the galaxy. They had become its safeguard. And somewhere, deep in unexplored space, civilizations watched humanity from afar. They studied their history, their wars, their choices. And when the question arose, what happens when monsters appear again? The answer was already known. They would not beg the council. They would not hide. They would call the humans. Because when aliens begged humanity for protection, the galaxy learned the truth. Humanity did not just fight monsters. They made sure monsters could never rise again.